Welcome back to the Chat X podcast. We got a great episode for you guys today. I'm here as always with my co-host Ferris, and we're going to discuss. Well, there's really one big piece of news, but we have a few other things we want to touch on as well. But of course, we got to start with the main event. We're going to get straight into it, guys, and we're going to discuss the effects these tariffs are having and what our thoughts are on them. The tariffs, of course, we're discussing are the initial ones that were imposed by Donald Trump and his administration, but we're also going to touch on the reciprocal tariffs that China and some other countries have passed in retaliation, and just in general, some of the third order effects we expect to see come as a result of this. How are you doing today, Ferris?
I'm doing good. How about you, Chad?
The tariffs haven't affected me yet. I went to the store today, and honey buns were the same price as they were yesterday. So
You can't go wrong with a good honey bun. So
I'm telling you, honestly, I mean, once the honey buns hit $5, I may drop 100 pounds in 2 months. At that point, like it'll be over for me.
there's a couple things that I feel like you can't touch. Honey buns. What are they called? The little donuts. Oh my
The
gosh, man.
donuts from like Little Debbie and
Donuts. Oh
Hostess, yeah,
yes, bro. You can't go wrong. That stuff right there, man. Like they're cheap and they're filling, man. So it's worth it.
they're
To
just
be honest with you.
satisfying. I feel like I want something sweet. Oh man, this honey bun's hitting. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, exactly. I remember there was that one trend. It's a random topic, but I remember that one trend they were doing. Like people were saying they were like, well, "Wow, they didn't do it. Thank goodness. I hope no one did it." But it was like like making a honey bun, warming it up in a microwave like that's like boiling, and like trying to throw it at a homeless person. Some of this, I don't know if you saw that before. That was on TikTok like a year ago. Like people were trying to like joking around, say, "Oh, I got this honey bun ready. I'm gonna throw it at it." I'm like, I throw it at a homeless person. I was like, that's crazy. I hope people actually didn't do it because that's crazy to do.
Interestingly enough, I saw something similar, but I think we're on different sides of the internet because I saw that the warm up a honey bun as a weapon trend, but it wasn't homeless people. I guess I'm on the pro homeless side of TikTok and all that. I was seeing like high school kids say, "I can't bring a gun to school, so I'm gonna just heat up this honey bun and throw it at somebody." So it's like hey, I it's a terrible thing to do, but I guess it's better than school shootings. So
Yeah, exactly. It targets a individual compared to the whole school. So
yeah, yeah, much better. But hey, I mean, guns might be easier to get than honey buns with these tariffs in place. A lot of
it's yeah.
the supplies we need, particularly wheat. Wheat has been impacted already though. By the war in Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine, both two of the world's largest wheat suppliers. But so far, with U.S. being able to pick up the slack in some other products, and the equilibrium is sort of held right now as far as food prices. A lot of people are expecting the war to result in a real famine across the world, but so far, trade's held up. We'll see what these tariffs do, though, because in terms of agriculture in particular, the U.S. is a huge food producer. I mean, pretty much every corn product that gets shipped around the world, anything with corn syrup in it, which honey buns probably do. I mean, let's be honest. I'll grab my box in a minute and tell you how much where high fructose corn syrup ends up on the list. It usually ends up on there twice, but a lot of things that just rely on corn syrup, corn products, and just other things that we produce through our agricultural sector. We're going to see how the rest of the world can move without those, because a lot of these countries, with their trade relations with the U.S. being disrupted by the fact that these tariffs are going to increase the cost of all goods that are shipped in or all goods that are manufactured with parts that are shipped in from these countries, it's gonna be shocking. The one thing of note that I will point out that's a positive thing here, in my opinion, is that Canada and Mexico were excluded from this round. So it looks as if Donald Trump's plan, at least, is to keep the Western Hemisphere under his purview. And all South American countries got a 10% tariff, which is the minimum that any country could get. So it looks like the Western Hemisphere, that is the two continents of the Americas, or the one continent if you're a European viewer of North and South America, all of those nations are going to stay in the U.S. sort of ecosystem of economics, and the rest of the world is looking to be cut off. We have truly entered the era of deglobalization. A lot of people were saying right after COVID, it was clear that deglobalization was going to occur, but it looks like we're finally here. Your thoughts on it, Ferris?
It's it's crazy the time we're living in. That's how I see it, man. I'll be honest with you. All these tariffs. You see the stock market, how it got affected really bad, really bad. And from what I think I saw a little, I saw some information. I did some digging onto it, and I saw like supposedly it's the lowest that we had since COVID, basically. And I'm like, people got to remember, COVID was a uh, It was a natural, I guess, like it was an unexpected event because of like COVID-19, you know.
Right.
So seeing the,
And the only
I'm
reason
sorry,
it
I
was
say,
the only reason it was reversed so quickly is because of government stimulus.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, people got to remember that, like the fact it had to be a big world event to be able to bring all the stock market down like that. But now it's being done because of these tariffs. And from looking into it, his goal is he wants to like get zero tariffs from other countries towards the US. But I think it's just more than just that. I'm being honest with you. I really think it's way more than just that because he wants to bring factories back to the US. But the thing is this when it's I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna happen. What I think is gonna happen is just is simple with how tariffs actually work, which is if the country gets tariffed and they got their product over there and they're making, let's say if it's Chinese parts, an American company is getting Chinese parts, what they're gonna do is they're gonna still order that Chinese part because it's still cheaper than what it would be in the U.S. And while they do that, they're just gonna they're gonna they're gonna charge more uh, the item that they're selling in the US to the consumers. So it's gonna really affect the American people. Uh, specifically if I do believe it's all this is gonna blow apart. And what that's just gonna make us do is become more isolationist towards everybody around the world. No one's gonna want to deal with it. And you remember how we talked about this, Chad, like a couple like maybe a month or two ago, regards to the BRICS? In my opinion, yeah, right now they're being a little bit quiet, but my opinion, it's gonna be that's just gonna speed up everything in the future because I think everybody's gonna want to go towards that direction of getting away from the American dollar because of stuff like this, you know?
The idea of instability. It's interesting
Mhm.
that even both the people who are pro and anti Donald Trump and his policies, both kind of come to an agreement here in saying that what his stated aims are can't actually be his aims. Like what you just said, his goal is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Both sides sort of agree on that a little bit, people who are pro and anti Donald Trump, but Donald Trump himself has said the opposite. He said the goal of this is to get rid of what he calls unfair trade tactics, including tariffs and just anything that causes sort of a trade deficit between the U.S. and another country, which most people who have some idea of economics in the current order under the current free market based global system we have, they believe that it's a good thing for comparative advantage to exist between different countries and for there to be trade deficits across different sectors and for countries to be specialized. Some of the people who are pro Donald Trump and who have been advising him in the past and who probably advise this decision do not believe that. They believe that it is key to control the manufacturing capacity of your own country in terms of certain things, mainly militarily. It's one of the reasons why the government has always subsidized the military industrial complex and arms manufacturers, defense contractors, groups of that nature, even though in theory we could probably, as a nation, if we wanted to save money, we could just offsize things or offset things and send them over to foreign countries. We could offshore all of our arms manufacturing to Russia, in theory, and China would love to take up arms manufacturing for the entire Western world. But we never sent those completely away. We sent pieces of it away. Pieces of the assembly line are assembled overseas, Vietnam, China, the Philippines, countries like that. But they always come back, and there's always a portion that's assembled in the U.S. And it's because many people in national security thought that some degree of manufacturing self sufficiency, especially when it comes to weapons and other things that are tied to the Department of Defense, are very important. Now the idea seems to be that China. It always comes back to China, and I'm gonna really focus in on China, but this affects several other countries in the world as well. I do want to just get ahead of that. But China is aging rapidly, and there are many people who believe that within the next 2 decades, probably before 2050, China will be irrelevant as a manufacturing power. So people who are pro isolationism, anti globalization, believe that globalization is going to end no matter what because the Chinese population is going to be cut in half and they won't have the people necessary to manufacture goods at the scale that the American economy requires and the American consumer base requires. Some people who are pro globalization still believe that China has invested so heavily in manufacturing and in AI and in other technical advances that help with manufacturing that even with a population that's cut in half, they'll still be able to serve the needs of the Western world. But Donald Trump and his camp appear to be betting against that. That's the generous attribution you give it. The less generous thing you could say about this whole ordeal is that, truth be told, Donald Trump is telling the truth. You know what I mean? He's telling us what he wants. He wants the trade deficit between the U.S. and every other country in the world to be non existent or positive in favor of the U.S. He wants them buying more things from the U.S. Than we as a nation are buying from them. This is interesting, and it's sort of a throwback historically to the British Empire. This is one of the things the British Empire did at their peak. They went out, colonized other nations, subjugated them, extracted raw resources from the natural environment in those nations, sent them back home to the UK. England was undergoing the Industrial Revolution at this point, so they were manufacturing finished goods from those raw resources, those raw materials, and they were forcing the citizens of these nations that they were colonizing and bringing under imperial rule to buy from them. And they were sort of destroying the manufacturing capability of these local nations as they did so. So this is an interesting idea. It looks like Donald Trump, instead of moving forward past globalization, he may be trying to take things back to an even older era than any of us are thinking of. Most people have always said, Donald Trump's trying to take America back to before the Civil Rights Act, to the 1950s or the 1940s. But it looks more like he's trying to take things back to, I mean, at the most recent, the late 19th century, possibly even all the way back to the 18th century with how he's doing things, and he views America as having a role similar to the British Empire. But whereas the British Empire was clearly operating as an extractive entity that went in and took resources out and forced finished goods onto those consumers in those nations, he views the United States as being sort of conquered imperially by every other nation in the world. It's an interesting mindset that you have to try to come at a couple different ways to understand what's going on with Donald Trump. I'm trying to just look at it from the perspective of he's doing what he says he's doing, which, interestingly enough, historically speaking, Donald Trump has been one of the most consistent presidents in regards to pushing through what his messaging was during his campaign. So, I mean, I think at a certain point you got to just believe what he says. This idea of bringing back manufacturing to the U.S. that everybody is intuiting from his actions doesn't line up with his words. I think we got to just go off what his words are saying, and that's he wants to he wants to force other countries to buy more American goods than we buy in terms of their goods. He wants to change the way trade balances work. Whether or not that'll work, I mean, it depends. Are we really that far removed from the 19th and 18th centuries? That's the real question in my mind. Are we so far removed from that older imperial era that any ideas that empires had at that point will no longer translate? Or has the world and the economy of the world not changed that much? I'm interested to see what'll happen. And I think, honestly, we're going to get the results of this very quickly. I think within the next year, we'll know if it was a tremendous failure or a tremendous success. I'm not as bearish on it as you seem to be, Ferris. I think there's a solid chance that we get some results from this that could be positive for the American people, or like you said,
Hmm.
we could see a bifurcation in the world completely, and we may see a big rise in living standards and economic cooperation between all the other nations of the world who view themselves as opposed to America. Namely, you mentioned the BRICS nations, but there's a few
Hmm.
nations that are sort of not full on members of BRICS, but are BRICS adjacent that may swing over to that economic sphere. Your thoughts on anything I just said, really?
No, I think you're right, and I think there is definitely a way that there can be some positives and that it can go that way. I just feel like him doing all this, especially towards our allies specifically, what I think is going to happen is you're doing the isolationist policies, which is he's gonna push these our number one allies away, which he's already doing, specifically Europeans, uh, and Canada. Canada even came out recently saying that like the prime minister right now just came out and said like we our relationship with Canada towards the U.S. is not going to be the same ever again because of the fact that like they're not reliable anymore. They're not reliable good neighbors anymore. Which I don't blame them for saying that because especially when they're being threatened about being a different state. So I,
Definitely.
I think I think it's just a crazy weird situation. I'll be honest with you. Um, I don't I don't yeah, I don't get it, man. I'll be honest with you. Like, um, like okay, I see the points of what he's trying to do. It's not like I'm totally ignorant in that aspect. I know he wants to bring the factories back, and I know he wants people to buy more American goods. But some of these places, I think I saw like a little statistic, like I think Lesotho, I think it's called,
That is a
for
country in Africa.
example. Yes, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. Uh, their exports is more than their imports, right? But there's a reason for that. It's because it's the diamonds that's being exported
It's
from
natural
their country,
resources, raw materials.
natural resource. Yes, and like they can't afford to be able to get American goods. Not every country in the world is gonna be able to get American goods. So that's the issue I have. I'm like people, like the American government expect people to be able to take get American goods, but not everybody can afford that because especially with the how high the it keeps getting here. So it's like I don't know. I think it's either gonna be good, what happen, or it might tremendously backfire.
Yeah.
All I
So
know for sure is I have people that like right now one of my friends crashing out regarding to his 401k. So.
yeah, I mean that brings us right into the next story of the day, which is one I thought was kind of funny. It's the idea. So since Trump announced these tariffs, we've been seeing a real slide in the stock market. It's been about 1,500 points a day for a few days now. Today, at the time of recording, which is April 7th, there was a bit of a mix-up. So at one point today, the stock market rose by about 1,500 points, and the reason for that is a tweet was sent out by somebody saying that one of Trump's advisors said that there would be a pause on the tariffs in the next 90 days. Trump was strongly considering it. The person who tweeted this out used a handle with the last name Bloomberg, so people thought this was a Bloomberg associate of the financial news reporter, and the name he used was, of course, of one of Trump's aides. And this went viral. The stock market had a response, a rally, and then people realized, oh, this is just a random guy with the last name Bloomberg citing some unsourced news. It went super viral. It ended up on the mainstream news, and basically the whole world got tricked. And then once people realized that, the stock market resumed its downward trajectory. So I just think it's funny that we've seen things like this in the crypto world for a long time. A lot of people talk about scam coins and fake news and the rallies and the drops and how volatile crypto is. But it seems like the internet has reached a point, it's probably been at this point for a while, but it's funny that we're noticing it now, where a tweet from a fake account, it makes me think of, for any of the sports fans out there, there's an account on Twitter called NBA Central, which reports on NBA news, and there's a parody account called NBA
Mhm.
Centel. And it looks
Mhm.
like the stock market is starting to get Centelled, where there's a fake parody accounts of real financial professionals saying things, and everybody's responding to them as if they're real news if they go viral enough. And it's it's really messing with some people's money. It seems to be. Your thoughts on that, Ferris?
No, yeah, it's I see it. Those parody accounts are so funny to me, man, because it does get people. It does get people. So,
It's getting everybody
um,
now. It's getting people whose literal job is to manage millions and billions of dollars. It's getting them with the parody accounts. So I mean,
which, like I said, you can't go wrong with humor. But I'm not gonna lie. So that's a different type of humor that some people like, some people don't. But
I'm sure your friend you
it's
were
like,
mentioning, he probably thought it wasn't funny at all. You know what I mean? He was
yeah,
mad as could be.
that's the thing. I'll be honest with you. That's the thing. It's like what you got to do is actually fact check. That stuff is like Centel example. It gives you a prime example to kind of like fact check before you actually believe that source. It's making people do their actual jobs for that.
Yeah, due diligence. People forgotten about it, and it's looking like parody accounts on the internet and the anonymity of the internet, really in general, is making people have to force themselves to double check stories. Speaking of us double checking stories, there's a story I had to double check because I thought it was, something completely made up. Somebody was pulling a prank on us all, but turns out it's true. And this is the final piece of news we're going to give you guys for the day. There are a species of wolves, formerly, they're extinct now, they're called dire wolves because of their massive size. There is an organization on Earth, a company right now that is dedicated to trying to analyze the DNA of extinct species and see if they can be reintroduced into the wild. And they have successfully cloned from this ancient DNA a species of wolf that went extinct 10,000 years ago, and there are now two dire wolf puppies roaming the earth. Roaming is maybe a bit of a stretch. They are under careful supervision, but they are alive and well, and there are videos of them on the internet. Ferris, I know I mentioned this to you before we started, and you had to go look it up. What are your thoughts on this? And on the idea of bringing back extinct species in general. The woolly mammoth is another one people have thought of bringing back for several years because of how close its DNA is to modern elephants. They think it would be really easy to clone them and possibly reintroduce them to certain parts of Europe or Siberia. You have any thoughts on the woolly mammoth or more specifically the dire wolves?
So I'd say they're bringing them back because of the specific reason. So like from what I heard for the woolly mammoth, it's gonna help somehow with the ecosystem. You know, um,
Europe has had a
from what
real decimation of its large predator populations over the past few years.
yeah, exactly. So like from what I heard, it's like that's what they're planning to do. I also think they need to kind of like bring back other extinct animals if it's possible. Like an animal I personally would like that's like there's a lot of animals that got recently extinct, you know. So if I'm them, I'll try to get these animals back too because you know they're unique. For example, I think what was it? Uh, Uganda, I think. No, Uganda. I know. There was somewhere like in Africa with the white rhinos that just recently like
They
the last
yeah.
one passed away.
Well, the last
So
female passed away. I think there's one male left,
yes,
and it's yeah, it's a mess.
yes. So like I think they need to find a way to make more. You know. Of like especially animals are in the brink of being done or they're already extinct, but like more recently. So let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we definitely do have enough white rhino DNA on file, because they went extinct so recently that we probably could make an effort to do that. And I would be
Mm.
interested in seeing that. I think, animals that went extinct due to poaching, I think would probably be the best target for efforts like this. Speaking of funny stories about rhinos, I have one more thing I'm going to say before we end it off. So, a lot of people are aware of unicorns, especially people who may have daughters or little sisters or any young women who really are into horses. They're probably also into unicorns. Unicorns, as they're currently depicted as horses with a horn growing on the head, is not how they've always been depicted. They used to be depicted as more deer-like with the horn in the past, and they're a mythological creature from European mythology, European folk tales that were theorized to exist because some people saw narwhal bones and narwhal fossils, and the heads were somewhat horse or deer shaped. The species narwhal is a species of whale that has a very long protruding horn. So the explorer Marco Polo, way back in the day, he's an Italian guy. He traveled the world. He ended up in China for a number of years, and his stories from China became sort of like a foundational not foundational myth, but just a go-to story for a lot of people who wanted to be explorers back in the day in Europe. Before he reached China, though, he also went through the Middle East and Africa. And while in Africa, he sent back a letter to his sponsors who had sponsored his exploration in Europe saying, I have found unicorns. They're real, but they're hideous. They look nothing like what we think they look like. And the reason he said this is because he ran into a rhinoceros in the wild and said, "Oh, that must be what a unicorn looks like. It's a big, four-legged land walking beast, kind of like a horse, very lightly haired. Horses also very lightly furred, and it has a big horn growing out of its head." So, the first person to discover a unicorn was absolutely repulsed by what he saw, and it's because he saw an animal that we think they should clone and bring back. Any thoughts on that one, Ferris? That story?
That's it's yeah, I guess it's interesting. I would like seeing some of these animals, bro, I'll be honest with you, that's like you never imagined seeing would be pretty kind of like weird because like it's like something that you see in movies and stuff like that. But hell,
Well,
even like the direwolves you just said, for example, it's everybody would know what a direwolf from Game of Thrones. You know what I'm saying? You see it, you hear about them. They're supposed to be like really big and all that stuff.
right.
But
But if you just told somebody, without the fossil record and the evidence we have, if you just told somebody, oh yeah, there used to be this species of wolf that was like bigger than humans, they were like 10 feet tall or something, or 7 feet tall at the shoulder, you know what I mean? People would just be like, okay, that's just something a little kid would make up, you know what I mean, for fun. Like, but
yeah.
no, fossil record shows it actually existed. And if you told somebody in medieval Europe about the idea of a rhino, they would just be like, yeah, sure. Or a giraffe, any animal, any of those exotic animals to a European
Mhm.
peasant would just be like, sure, whatever, maybe. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the news, the stories, and the analysis of current events. As always, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.